The rumors, Sales Nation, are true. I record most of these episodes in my pajama bottoms. And coming up on today's episode of the Salesman Podcast.
Well, let's put it this way. Traditional sales and consultative selling no longer works. And what we're saying here is to have a sale, what's the important part of a sale? You need a buyer. Without buyers, there's no sales. And what we've been doing is focusing on ourselves as opposed to being focused on the buyer.
Hello Sales Nation, I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman Podcast, and welcome to today's episode. On today's show we have Bob Urichuck, and you will have seen, if you've clicked on download this episode or you're watching it on YouTube, you'll have seen quite a hefty hitting title here, and it is true. Bob completely turns sales on its head, and it is super important, this episode. It's super intriguing, super counterintuitive, and there's a lot of value in it. Bob tests me throughout the episode with my thoughts and my knowledge on this, and I'm sure you guys will get a lot out of it as well. You can find out more about Bob over at velocityselling.com. His book, Velocity Selling, is available on Amazon. We link to that, his other websites, and a bunch of resources over at salesman.red/182. And with that, let's jump into today's show. Hi, Bob, and welcome to the Salesman Podcast.
Thank you, Will. It's great to be here today.
You're more welcome. I'm excited to have you on the show. And I'm going to start off by quoting you something that was on, I think it was on your book Amazon page as opposed to in the book itself. It might be in the book as well. And I want you to just explain it a little bit for us, because this is going to be the basis of our conversation. And, you know, we could probably talk about 5 hours just on this very specific subject itself. But the quote was, to succeed in sales, you need to do the opposite of selling. Give us a 500 or 5,000 foot overview of what that means, and then we'll jump in deeper.
Well, let's put it this way. Traditional sales and consultative selling no longer works. And what we're saying here is to have a sale, what's the important part of a sale? You need a buyer. Without buyers, there's no sales. And what we've been doing is focusing on ourselves as opposed to being focused on the buyer. What we need to do is become more buyer-focused in this new economy of buyers. Because of the internet, people could buy anything they want online. And of course, they don't need salespeople to waste their time. And unless we change the way we do things, we're going to end up like the dinosaurs, extinct. We have to learn how to bring more value to buyers than we've ever brought before. And of course, what do buyers want most? There's 4 things they need. They want to be understood. They want to feel important. They want to feel comfortable. These are things that they're seeking out. Are we giving it to them? So what we're saying here is by doing the opposite of selling, let me ask you a question, Will. Do you prefer to be sold or do you prefer to buy?
Of course, it's massively cliche, but I think you're spot on. I think I clearly prefer to buy. It's the process of buying as opposed to being pitched, which is useful.
Exactly. So let's take a look at selling is telling, is it not? Mm-hmm. What's the opposite of telling?
Listening.
How about asking?
Nice.
What's the opposite of talking?
Listening.
So you see, what we've done is we've taken everything of traditional sales, completely flipped it around, and we do the complete reverse. What we do is we attract buyers, we engage them, and we empower them to buy. We don't close them, we empower them to buy. We don't talk to them, we don't tell them stuff, we engage them through a self-discovery process so they understand their own pains and their cost of doing nothing. And of course, they're empowered to buy the solution from you, which makes it even better.
Bob, we'll dive into the process, I'm sure, in a minute, and we'll get as step-by-step as what we can with the time that we've got.
Yeah.
But what do you mean by, and I want to dive into this, and I want to focus on this point specifically, out of everything you said then, what do you mean by empower the prospect? Because that's something that sales leadership and managers that I've had have said to me, if you need to empower the buyer. And it's very easy to say it and then to go over your head and then go back to just trying to ram your pitch down people's throats.
Well, first of all, we watch the language we use. We don't use closing techniques because, that's traditional, and nor do we convince people or influence people. So rather than convince, we use the word engage. So I engage you in a conversation. When it gets to the point where I'm delivering, and by the way, we provide solutions. We don't give solutions, we provide prescriptions. We don't do presentations, we do prescriptions. So when we do a prescription, we give them a solution to their problem. And one of the techniques we use to measure it would be something as simple as this, Will. On a scale of 0 to 10, how would you rate our interview so far? 0, it's the worst one you've ever had. 10, it's one of the best. How would you rate it on a scale of 0 to 10?
3 minutes in, I'd give you a solid 8 or 9. I feel like we could really go somewhere.
That's great, Will. What's it going to take to get you to a 10?
Maybe some naked women jumping around in the background, or
This is the technique we're using.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, based on the solution I just presented to you, Will, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0, it's not, you don't see yourself using it. 10, you already see yourself using the product. If people say less than 6, well, you got to take the fault. If it's 7, 8, or 9, what's it going to take to get you to a 10? If it's 9, you say something like, is it fair to say, Will, that you really work on a scale of 0 to 9 and 10 does not exist? Go ahead.
Yeah.
What would you like me to do? So my line would be here. This is where I empower you. What would you like me to do next? And I let the client say, well, let me get you a purchase order, or, let's sign the agreement, or here's my credit card, or whatever the process is. So what we're doing by empowering them is we're involving them into discovering that this is the right solution for them, a 9 or a 10. And then the simple question, what would you like me to do next? By empowering the buyer, you, the salesperson, are always maintaining control.
Let me jump in here, because there's one of two things are going on. I'm impressed with the way that you've just pitched me on my own interview. So there's two things that are going on. There's one, you are using very clever linguistic techniques and questions, which is very structured, which is very methodical, or you are delivering massive value, and it's, I know you don't like the word, or you're going away from the word consultative, but you've just gone for a very consultative process. So, and they diverge, I think, perhaps in that the first methodical, process-driven way of doing this is obviously replicable. You could go on pretty much any podcast, just do the same, ask the same question with different words, and you get a similar result, and it was a fantastic result.
Yeah.
Or it's down the path of you are being very present, and you've got a great deal of wealth of knowledge behind all this, and you're asking questions that are, diving into that knowledge, and only you perhaps could have asked those questions, versus it being scripted and methodical. Which way does this go? I'm intrigued with this.
Okay. I guess we got to understand something here. Will, who's the most important person in the world?
Yourself.
You. In other words, you say me, right? Okay, yourself. That's great. Who's your greatest enemy?
Ooh, yourself, I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. People find that one really quick. Now, here's the thing. You got a buyer in front of you. Who's the most important person?
They are.
They are, exactly.
To themselves,
If without them, we've got nothing. So we got to put the focus on the buyer. So the key thing with the buyer is we've got to be there for them. It's not about us. It's not about our brand. It's not about our solution, our product, our commission, none of that stuff. It's strictly about the buyer. So the first thing we need to do is get the buyer to open up so that they trust us and they feel comfortable with us. So we call this step one in the system. Actually, it's called building rapport, getting that trust that we need. So how do you build rapport? You ask open-ended questions. What do people like to talk about the most?
Themselves, of course.
Exactly. So we ask open-ended questions for them to talk about themselves. And we show interest and we keep them talking. The more they talk, the more we listen, the more we learn, and the more better off we're going to be in the whole process, and the more they trust us.
Yeah, let me just jump in here, Bob. I want to take a step back. Perhaps I didn't ask my question well enough, and I want to dive into this. I want to get this sorted, and then we can move on and go through the process, because this is brilliant. But the process you just went through, I had a big grin on my face as you were going through it, because I could see the applications of this in most B2B situations.
By the way,
go on.
Just one other thing. You saying B2B? We got one step better than B2B. What do you think that is?
I don't know who I'm quoting, or if it's
okay.
Go on, but human to human.
You got it. H to H, because that's what really it's all about. Between sales and a buyer, a salesperson, a buyer, it's human being to human being. And as long as you understand buyers' behaviors, that will help you facilitate the whole session.
You're doing your best to take me off track here, Bob, with this knowledge, which is good, because it's good to have an interview that's back and forth. I appreciate that. But what I want to get at is the process you just went through. Was that a process that could go with every single person? Is it something that is scripted? Is it something that you could, we don't need to do it on the show now, but it could be a blog post, for example, that you say, 9 to 10 this, 9 to 10 this, 9 to 10 this. And then you could sell a business deal. You could pick up someone at a bar. You could do multiple things with it. Or,
yes,
or
you can.
Yeah, so let me give you the alternative here as well. Or were you asking questions that you were creating on the fly because of your knowledge and experience?
Well, I could do this stuff on the fly, but yes, this works in every industry, in situation. It works with, don't forget, a leader, a sales leader, and a sales rep. The sales leader, who's the buyer? The sales rep. So the sales leader has to engage a sales rep to do things. Mm-hmm. So you look at a parent and a child, you look at in a bar, any of these scenarios, yes, it works in all areas, because it's all about human behavior.
Good. That is the bet. That's what I wanted to get at, because obviously underlying we're all, it's probably a better way to phrase it, but we're all pretty dumb. We're all running on similar processes. We all want similar things. It's not even that we want, we're driven and we need these things. And this is what I like about your work, Bob. And this is why I wanted to come on the show. And this is why I wanted to dive into that point, even though perhaps I didn't ask the best question to get the answer from you.
Will, let me take the other part, the scripting part.
Sure.
Because that is an important part. In the system, we have people identify, list your solutions. What pains or pleasures do these solutions solve? And then what question can you ask to uncover the pain or pleasure to which you have a solution? Get the idea? So we're working in reverse order here. The idea now in scripting is, if you ask a question, what are the possible answers you could get? And if you get that answer, what are the possible questions you could ask afterwards? So scripting is not about reading the lines. It's having a prepared mind that if you ask this, what are some of the possible answers? And then where do you take it from there? So I'm very prepared for any scenario at any time in this kind of case. So what we do is we help teach people these techniques so that they could actually be in control of the conversations at all times.
So is this the exact pure opposite of a consultative conversation, where a consultative, you're trying to dig the answers out and you're trying to suss out what you can do best to help the prospect? You're taking a step back before you go into the meeting. You're reverse engineering the conversation that you want to have, and then you're engineering questions to take them because they might not know the pain that they're in, to engineer the conversation to uncover the pains that you know they have. Is that correct?
Well, here's the thing. First of all, when you go on a call, we change the language. Do you make appointments with people, Will? We don't use the word appointment. We say, Will, do you ever invite people to your office to discuss these things in greater details? So I get invited. I arrive at the office. Thank you for inviting me. I don't bring anything with me. No brochures, nothing. Just my notebook. What kind of an image do you now see? If I bring my briefcase, well, hey, here comes a salesman and waste my time. If I come in with a notebook, they see me as, hey, here's somebody who wants to learn a little bit about our business and take some notes. So that presentation, that part is a very important step. Now, where were we going on this?
I've no idea. I've got the questions I've got in front of me have gone out the window, Bob, which is a good thing. The sooner they go out the window in a conversation, the more I know we're getting somewhere with this. And let me just put us back on track with this, because we've covered a lot of ground here. Is there a overall? So we know that there's linguistics involved in all this. We know that the reverse engineering is the key to this, and perhaps the real key and the real crux, which I'm getting so far, is that everything that we think is right is probably wrong. So everything we've talked about so far, and let me just dive in this. Everything that we've talked about so far, by not doing the consultative approach, by not turning up with your even perhaps this weird corporate monkey suit and a briefcase, turning up slightly more as perhaps the prospect is dressed or whatever it is. All of this is doing a number of things. I can feel from our conversation so far. It's one, getting you to the point where you want to be. You're in control, which is the word you used before. And two, this is setting you apart from everyone else that's selling to that person, isn't it?
Totally. And that's what gives you the edge, because you're different than everyone else. And it's not about you or your products.
Nice. Okay, so getting back to a higher level overview, because I feel like we could talk about this all day, and I love talking about human behavior, and we'll perhaps come back to that in a minute. But is there there's so many acronyms out there, like the AIDA model, the SPIN, and all these. Is there either an acronym or a process or a step-by-step of perhaps the conversations that we want to have and the process of selling in this manner?
Yes. The acronym, I like to call this, the velocity selling system is as simple as A, B, C, D.
Yep.
A is the foundation of all successful people, attitude. And we look at attitude towards yourself, towards your organization, and towards the buyer. Then you look at behavior towards yourself. Why do you go to work? Personal goals. Then we take a look at organizational behavior, the corporate goals, and how you're going to reach them. Then we look at tracking your behaviors and identifying your call to close ratios. We also then look at the buyer. What's your behavior towards the buyer? And we look at the process of, we categorize buyers in 3 categories, A, B, and C. A being absolutely necessary, the 80-20 rule. 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your customers. The B, beneficial, the C, convenient. And yet, where do salespeople spend 80% of their time? C's. Mm-hmm. When they should be spending 80% of their time in their A's. So then, from that point, when we get into target marketing, we then look at their behavior towards the buyer as a personal marketing plan. For example, what are you doing to position yourself in the marketplace as an expert so that people come looking for you by name? Yes, your company has a marketing plan, but what's your personal marketing plan? And we get them to come up with unique ideas that cost nothing to position themselves as expert, so they're actually sought out. They're attracting buyers versus chasing buyers. It's a pull strategy versus a push strategy. Then we get into C, competencies. In competencies, we have 2 parts. First part is you got to master these. 1, being buyer focused. 2, learn how to engage buyers. And 3, how to empower buyers. Then in competencies part 2, we teach you the full system. The system is very simple. Very simple 7 steps. 1, you go in to build rapport. 2, you set the ground rules or set the parameters, as we call it. And this alone will shorten your sales cycle, these techniques, in step 2. Then what we do is we uncover buying motivators. Buying motivators are the pains and pleasures, the things people are looking for. So we have to uncover buying motivators. It follows the old saying of no pain, no gain. Then, of course, we look at financial ability. Do they have a budget set aside? And then we look at decision making. When will they be making a decision? Who besides themselves is involved in the decision-making process? We then summarize. At this point, we should know whether we have an opportunity to do business or not. In other words, whether we can get a sale or not. If we feel we can, we tell them we can. If we feel we can't, we tell them. And I'll show you later how we set this up. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, from the summary, we get into the prescription. We do the prescription. We empower the buyer to buy. And then the final step is maintaining the relationship, seeking out referrals, introductions, and creating what I call a secondary sales force so that you're never having to look for business. They're sending it to you.
Nice.
And then the final step is what we call D, discipline. Discipline is a commitment to the most important person in the world. It means doing what you have to do even when you don't want to do it. But with discipline, when you do something, you have to have a reward, because any behavior that gets recognized or rewarded gets repeated. So what we do is we identify what are some of your daily disciplines, weekly disciplines, monthly disciplines, and so on and so forth, so that each day you are changing your ineffective habits to effective habits, because discipline is a habit, and you're doing the right things. And it takes you through the whole process.
Bob,
that covers it all.
There's a lot to go there, and it does cover it all. I like the way that you very specifically are covering from the foundational level to the sales process to discipline. You can read as many books as what you need as you can, and if you don't put it into practice and you don't constantly put yourself back on track, of course it means absolutely nothing. It's just procrastination. So I appreciate that, and I will give I'll give a quick overview of what you just mentioned in the show notes to this episode, and of course the solution of all this is to buy the book, and we'll link to the book in the show notes as well. But 2 things you mentioned that I want to dive into a bit deeper, and again going off this, focusing on this idea of perhaps the process we do when we're sat in the room with the person, the questioning or the counterintuitive things that we're not doing, which we perhaps should be doing. And these are on the ground rules that we set, and also the how we feel whether they're in a position to buy or not. I think those two are perhaps positions where if you're not confident when you go into the meeting as a sales professional, you perhaps, if you've not worked on your attitude and behavior, well, you've lost it before you've gone in, because you don't know what you want to get out of the meeting. And I've been there as well. I've sat down with surgeons and I think, well, I'm adding value by just having a chat about their kids and relationship and all this, and you're building deeper rapport. But in hindsight, it's a waste of time, because
it's not really, Will. You build the trust in the rapport. But now that you got them talking and they're talking freely, here's how you set it up for ground rules. Can I proceed with that one?
You are more than welcome.
Because you're going to love this one. This is magic, and it just shortens your sales cycle enormously, especially when you're dealing with surgeons, because they're very busy people. Mm-hmm. So you're the surgeon, you're talking, and then I see you're open. I know I've got your trust because you're talking openly. And then I interject and I say, and role play with me here, Will. By the way, Will, how much time do you set aside for our meeting today?
15 minutes.
And what is it you'd like to accomplish in the next 15 minutes?
I'm not sure.
Okay. We'll look at that. I'd also like to learn a little bit about you. Is it okay if we ask each other some questions?
Yes, of course.
Now, do you mind if I take some notes?
Nope. Go for it.
Okay, great. And by the way, Will, I can't solve the world's problems, and I may not be able to solve your problems. If I can't help you, are you okay if I tell you no, I can't help you?
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
In other words, let's just be honest with each other and work on yes-no answers. Because what I find a lot of times is people say think it over. Think it over really means no, and it ends up wasting your time. The last thing I want to do today is waste your time. Did you want to ask the first question, Will, or do you want me to?
You go for it.
We just finished ground rules. Now let me walk you through it. First thing I asked is how much time you set aside for your meeting? Whose time's most important, yours or the buyer's?
The buyer's.
Buyer's. Whose objective is more important, yours or the buyer's?
Buyer's.
So I asked you, what is it you'd like to accomplish in that 15 minutes? And then I built in my objective, and I'd like to learn a little bit more about you and your organization to see if there's an opportunity to do business or not. And I always bring in the or not. Okay, so it's not just, positive yes, 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 like that's been drilled in our heads for years. I go for no. Because if I go for no, they're going to be comfortable with saying yes. So I have to make them comfortable with knowing yes. Always ask permission to ask questions, permission to take notes. Only once did someone say, no, I don't want you to take notes. This is extremely confidential, and that's fine. And this is the big one. I can't solve the world's problems, and I may not be able to help yours. If I can't help you, are you okay if I tell you no? And if I can, I'll be honest with you and tell you yes. Could we work with each other on an honest yes-no basis? Now, how did that make you feel when I said that?
It made me feel like there was a structure and a point to the conversation.
And the barriers came down. I'm not trying to pitch you, because it's not about me. It's about you, the buyer. So you're feeling more relaxed and more into it. So following this now, we say, would you like to ask the next question, or would you like me to? Now, there's many other things we could build into setting the ground rules. For example, let's say your phone keeps ringing and I'm interrupted. Mm-hmm. How would you deal with that traditionally? You're going into a client, their phone's always ringing when you're with them. How can you deal with that in the ground rules on the next visit?
So this happens with surgeons all the time. Of course, they're getting bleeped and buzzed. So I would always say something along the lines of, and you can give me your insights whether this is good or bad. And I'll tell you, because it's almost a passive way of going about it, so it's perhaps not the best because there's no control. But I would always say, because I had a good relationship with them, that, look, if you need to go and perform surgery, save someone's life, yada, 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 I appreciate your time. And, if we need to rearrange, let's get a date in the diary when you're not getting buzzed and beeped, and we'll come back and reassess and re-engage then.
Okay. Here's what I would do. The last call I was in, I had a lot of interruptions. I would say, Will, have you ever been in a conversation with someone and all of a sudden the phone rings? What happens to our conversation?
It stops.
What can we do to prevent that from happening to us today?
Not use our phones.
Oh, okay.
See,
now, whose idea was that?
The problem if I said that to a surgeon, though, Bob, just playing out devil's advocate a little bit, is that they would perhaps, that question in particular, the way you said it, they perhaps feel they'll just look at me like I'm what's the word? I'm leading them somewhere, and I'm almost being condescending by the perhaps the way that went, especially with a surgeon who are, the stereotypical alpha males. Just to play devil's advocate a little bit with that.
Okay. What I found a lot of times is when you say something like that, they say, "Yeah, it's a good idea. Let's go for a coffee," and they'll try to walk away from it. I've never had anyone ever say it felt condescending or it was inappropriate. And remember, the whole idea is you're never telling anybody what to do. You're asking. Let me give you another example.
I am. You are leading them, and I think surely people do understand and get that.
So I look at it. Have you ever been in a conversation? We get interrupted. What could we do to prevent that from happening to us today? I'm leaving the decision hint to him. He says, "Well, I'm going to have to deal with it." Okay, that's fine. If that's what he says, I'm okay with it. But here, let me give you another example. How do you like to be communicated with, Will? A telephone, email,
face-to-face.
Face-to-face. Okay. Now, we're having a face-to-face right now, but let's say we wanted to follow up on each other in the next day or two. You had a question for me. How would you follow up with me?
Sure, phone is best then.
Oh, you'd phone me? Okay. And if I wasn't in and you left me a voicemail, how quickly would you like me to reply?
Within the day, the work day.
Okay, within the work day. Will, can I expect the same from you in return?
No, because I'm a surgeon and I'm far too busy to be throwing back and forth with salespeople.
Okay, but I'll tell you right now, if we did the rapport building correct,
sure.
Right now you wouldn't be a salesperson. We'd be partners exploring to see if there's opportunities for both of us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in this case here, what I'm doing is I'm getting a commitment from the buyer to return my calls or my emails or whatever based on their communication style, which they prefer.
What do you do, Bob? If you're selling to someone who is like yourself and understands all this, does this just go back and forth perfectly? Like it's a perfect tennis match, or
it's like a perfect.
Yeah, is that how it goes down?
It does go down as a perfect tennis match because what we do is we call this going toe to toe. And it's an exercise we do in training programs where we get everybody going on the same path, back and forth. The whole objective is not to be answering questions, but to always be asking the questions. The person answering the questions thinks they're in control. It's the person asking the questions that is always in control. In this system, the buyer always feels 100% in control, and that's what you want. You look at traditional sales and everything else, the salespeople think they're in control. And then I'll ask them, how many of you have been rejected? I'll put up your hands, of course. Well, who's really in control? The buyer's rejecting you. Is it not your job to qualify the buyer and reject them if they're not qualified? So what we do here is we give that opportunity to qualify the buyer, and that's why we say no. If I can't help you, you okay if I tell you no? And then, of course, we go through the process, and in the summary, we then come across, okay, so Will, you got this problem, this problem, this problem, and this budget, and this decision-making timing. Well, based on what you're saying with budget, I have to tell you that no, I cannot help you. However, I might know someone who can. Do you mind if I put them on to you? Just to maintain the relationship. A no today doesn't mean no forever. As a matter of fact, when someone says no, a natural habit that I have is that no for now or no forever. And they say no for now. And then, of course, after that, I'll say, okay, when's now over? Another technique is you walk away from a no. You could pack up and say, oh, by the way, before I leave, Will, I really want to excel in my profession. Can you please just give me a couple of minutes and tell me how I can improve? Where did I go wrong? What can I do better? And what you find a lot of times is you strengthen that rapport that you built, and that buyer ends up buying from you because you're coming from a point of human help. I want your feedback, your help. And people don't have the courage to do these sort of things, but these are things that work.
Well, courage is, I think, key to all this, and we'll dive into that because I'm more than happy to have you on, Bob, to dive into this and multiple shows in the not distant future. And I'm conscious of time now, so I've got one question that will wrap up this part of the show. So give us perhaps a one-word answer to this, and then we'll dive through a couple of questions I ask everyone that comes on. And you kind of alluded to it then, but at the process or the end of the process, when you're deciding whether the buyer is, qualified, whether you want to work with them or not, if you're taking control of all of this, are you making a decision through the specific parameters that are written down that they must adhere to, or is it more of a gut decision that you're making?
I don't want to waste the buyer's time, and I don't want to waste my time. I'd always put it across like, I don't want to waste your time. If they're not qualified, if they don't have the budget, if they don't have the decision-making power, if they don't have pain, let's say, I'm selling sales training and I go into a client and they're all hitting target and everything is like top-notch performing and great. Can I sell them anything? There's no need for sales training. They're doing a fantastic job. They're reaching their budget. Everyone's disciplined. They're getting the performance they're looking for. I just take that as a learning opportunity. That's fantastic. What are you doing to make things work? That's you know what I mean? Just reinforcing what they're doing, and then tell them, everything's going well. I don't think I can help you at this point.
But is that your gut telling you? I feel that they are doing fine, or is it they are hitting target, so I'm not working with them?
You should always listen to your gut. Number one, I'm a big believer in that. My whole process in Attitude, we talk about a lot about living your life from the inside out. Your gut is on the inside, and you should always follow your gut. Follow your inner voice. Also, from a point of view of qualifying the buyer, if they don't have money, if they can't make a decision, like who besides yourself is involved in the decision-making process? Well, there's the vice president. There's a committee. Well, you got to get up in front of these vice presidents and committees, and you got to meet with all these people, and you got to go through the whole system with each of them. You just can't jump around and just go to a committee without knowing what to expect. And that person could be a good coach for you if they're not the decision maker themselves.
But you should be going off both your gut and fact. There's no
one
or the other. Good. Well, Bob, let me jump into these questions because we're running out of time here, mate. Honestly, I love all this. I love the behavioural side of sales. First one, quick. These are the quick fire questions, but if you feel that they need more than a one-word answer, you're free to dive into them. First one, do you work better in the morning or in the evening?
It's funny, I ask that question to people all over the world. What's your most productive time of your day? And I'm a morning person. I used to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning, have a cup of coffee. When I realized my most productive time of the day was the morning, I get up at 6 o'clock. 6 to 7 is Bob time. Bob does something to help Bob get where Bob wants to go. At 7 o'clock, what's my reward? My first cup of coffee. And I earned it. I enjoy it 10 times more. And as I drink that cup of coffee, I give gratitude for the fact that I can have a cup of coffee when there's millions of people in this world that can't get a clean glass of water.
Do you have a process for gratitude? Do you write anything down? Do you have like a journal or anything like that?
I used to do a lot of writing and journals, but now no. I'm grateful so many times during the day as I see things. I'm just grateful all the time.
Nice. The reason I ask is that it comes up almost every single, maybe because I'm searching for it, I don't know, but gratitude seems to come up with all the experts that come on, pretty much unashamedly every single person. And it's something that perhaps isn't associated with the stereotype of a salesperson.
Well, here's the other part of gratitude. And in my book, Discipline for Life, You Are the Author of Your Future, I had written 11 chapters and I couldn't figure out the 12th one. Finally, it woke me up in the middle of the night and that chapter came to my mind, Be Thankful. And it became 12, and that's where I got the word 12 disciplines. So it's 12 disciplines to live in life of your dreams, but now it's Discipline for Life, You Are the Author of Your Future. A big part about being thankful is not only showing your gratitude, but it's giving back. And so how can you give back? And people don't understand that you could give back in other ways than financial. Put a smile on someone's face. And I can never forget this. I was in Dubai one time having breakfast, and a gentleman comes walking by me with the longest face in the world. And I'm going, my God, what can I do to help make this guy's day better? And he, as he walks by me, I say, good morning. He looks at me, he says, good morning. I said, how are you? And he said, just fine. And I looked at him, I said, just fine? How do you think your day is going to be? He said, well, it'll be just fine. How are you? I said, excellent, fantastic. As a matter of fact, it's going to be a great day. He looks at me and he goes, whoopee. Why is it going to be a great day? I said, wait a second. Do you know what GREAT stands for? He says, no, tell me. I said, GREAT, getting really excited about today. Then he says to me, why are you excited about today? And I got out of my chair and I said, because I woke up. I could see, I could hear, I could walk, I could talk. I got business to do today. And you know what? One of us may not be here tomorrow. So shouldn't we make today the best day of our life? He looked at me, he says, I like your attitude. Can I join you? It turns out he's a senior executive that just laid off 500 people. Most of them were friends that he had to let go. And I could understand his thing. But he ended up, we had a long discussion about attitude, turned it around, and how he should move forward with the remaining staff that he had. And that was a great conversation. But that was giving back without any looking for reward. Because I was thankful, I'm happy. You got to give it to others. It's what you got inside that you can give away. It's the same thing that applies in the workplace. Number one motivating factor in the workplace is praise and recognition. Why aren't we working in environments of praise and recognition? I wrote an article on this. It was one of the most popular ones. I don't know how many countries picked it up in HR magazines and translations, but I took them through the process. And basically, the simple answer to this, Will, is what do we do to ourselves all day? Do we praise ourselves or do we criticize ourselves? And if we criticize ourselves, what are we going to give away?
Uh-huh.
But if we take the good that we do and take a look at what are some of the good things we do and give ourselves a tap on the back every once in a while, then it becomes easier. Now that we see good in ourselves, we can see good in others and praise them.
I think we're throwing quick fire out the equation with these, Bob, which is good, which is fine.
Yeah.
Next one. What is, dollar size if possible, what is the biggest deal that you've ever done?
Well, I was going to say 5.7 billion US dollars. And I'm not going to say I did it, but I coached the people to do it. And it was back in Dubai again. I was approached in September by a CEO. They were at 3.2 billion. And I said, billion or million? He says, billion. I said, UAE dirhams, or are you talking US dollars? He says, US dollars. I said, wow. So 3.2, and what's your target? He says, 5.7 billion. And I said, okay, and when's your year end? He says, December. And I said, okay, so there's 3 months left. What did you want me to do? And he said, well, Bob, we've heard a lot of great things about you. We thought a day or two of training, you could turn our salespeople around and get them on target. And I looked at him. I said, are you serious? Listen, why don't you just give me $25,000 and we'll call it quits right now? He says, what do you mean? I said, come on, when was the last time you attended a 1 or 2 day training program that changed your life? And he said, well, I don't understand. I said, look, I'll do the 2 days, work out the details here with Gautam. We did the 2 days training, but I said, in 2 weeks, I want you to follow up with these people and ask me for a proposal. Now, this is a great trip and a great tip. Will, do you do proposals?
Sometimes.
Okay. What happens when people do proposals is they write a proposal and they give it to you. Whose proposal is it?
The buyers? I don't know.
It's the seller's proposal because you did it.
Sure.
But here's what you do. You create a proposal and you stamp draft across it. I now give you a draft proposal. I am inviting you to cross a T, dot an I, make any changes. That's what I did in Dubai. They took it, they came back with a legal agreement, and they wanted me to do 50 days of work. And I let them even pick the number, which was twice the number I was having. Again, we leave money on the table. If we put our budget on the table, we want them to put their budget on the table. Long story short, I go back, I spend a week there. I learn a lot. This is a 2-week assignment in November before year end. I learned a lot in the first week. Second week, I sit down with the CEO and I said, your largest sales are selling floors. Have you ever sold more than a floor? He says, no. I said, okay, I've got an idea and here's what I'd like to do. And we did a lot of pre-discussion. I want 5 buildings. He says, Bob, you can't sell buildings. I said, I like the way you say can't because can't motivates the shit out of me. So I want 5 buildings and I want 5 of what you feel are your top reps. And I'd like them each to be of a different nationality. Each of them becomes an expert on a building and each of them will contact your A clients in these different countries. And let's see if we could sell off 2 or 3 buildings by Christmas, because if we could do that, we could hit target. Before Christmas, they sold 3 buildings and surpassed the 5.7 billion target. And all that took was changing the way they think, doing a few changes, and keeping them structured so that their focus was on A buyers and not wasting their time on C buyers.
So this isn't one of the quickfire questions, but I'm going to ask you it. How much money is left on the table because the salesperson has very fixed beliefs and attitudes?
A lot of money's left on the table. You should never put price on the table first. The salesperson should never be the first to put price on the table. Your job is to get them, identify their pains. When you understand their pains and you take their pain to a personal level, how does that make you feel personally? When they feel that pain, that's where you really got to get to. And then you ask, have you got a budget set aside for this? And then you work off of their budget.
Let me interrupt you here. Yeah. Because I'll get something out of this as well, and this will be useful for the audience. So say that I'm selling podcast sponsorship. people are coming to me. The ad space is sold now till 2017. So I'm not charging enough. That's a fair point.
That's
If I don't, and it's a CPM rate per 1,000 that we're charging. How do I, and again the audience, how do I and we structure a conversation using me as an example to give context, where I say, here's the problem we're solving. It's a very niche audience that we've got that pretty much anyone. Let me just. I know you. I can see you're eager to dive in.
But you're telling me. You're telling me. I don't want you to be telling me.
No. I'm just giving you context of the conversation as opposed to what I would tell them. So we've got a niche audience. It's grown in size. So and they come to me knowing all this. I've not pitched them on this. How do I have a conversation with them where the outcome for me is hopefully they say, well, we value it at this much, and that's more than perhaps what I would have charged. How do I ask questions to funnel them down to that point?
So what we're going to do is we've already did rapport. We did set the parameters. Now we're into buying motivators. Buying motivators is, why would someone advertise on your podcast? What's in it for them?
They are trying to convert my audience to their customers.
Okay, so your solution is converting, right?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so what would their pain or pleasure be? Why would they be doing that?
The whole point of it essentially is that it's not taking them any effort, it's not taking them extra time. They're putting money in and getting more money out of the other side of a seamless process.
So by setting up your questions from a point of view, like, what are you doing to advertise your services today? And you identify all the different media and how they're working. What sort of return are you getting? Mm-hmm. Is that a good enough return? But you know your stuff. You're leading them to discovering your solution. Get the idea? So we start with open-ended questions. We take them down the funnel to leading questions, concerning questions, fact-finding questions, and then closed-ended questions, the yes/no type answers. So as we get this detail, we're helping them discover for themselves that they could get a better return on their investment with your podcast than their traditional media. Mm-hmm. Now, when you get to that point, we need to do something like that. You're not selling solutions yet. You're just asking questions and understanding. And what kind of a budget have you got set aside for, what would you call it, promotional media or for media advertising, or, you know what I mean? Yeah. And how do you divvy it up? And this is where you try to lead them towards giving you a number of what they would be prepared to put up. Now, they say to you, they say, okay, we could give you, £1,000.
Let me just stop there, because it's interesting actually, because I do a lot of what you just said, which is good. How do you get? Because I think this is the key point to the point so far. How do you ask them how much? Is it as simple as what is this? Oh. What would this be worth to you, or what will How do you? What's the wording you use? Because that is where people would stumble in this, I think.
Yeah, I think part of it is in buying motivators. You're trying to identify 3 to 4 buying motivators. Then you summarize them. So if I understand you, Will, correctly, Will, you want to get more coverage, you want to get better buyers, this, that, whatever it is. Is that correct? Yes. Have you got a budget set aside for this? Would you mind sharing that with me in round numbers? Sharing is partnering. Round numbers is less intimidating. Yeah. Yes, we have a budget, but I can't share it with you. Okay, well, then you get into bracketing. Would this be in the $10,000 to $15,000 range, or in the $20,000 to $25,000 range? That kind of thing. But what you're trying to do is get their number out as opposed to your number. If they force you to reveal price, you always reveal your highest price, because then it's easier to come down. Yeah. Very similar thing happened with the Dubai transactions when they were hiring me. They put a price on the table. It was their number. And I was thrilled because it was more than double my number. Yeah. But they went to the board, they came back, and they chopped off 25%. They were still 25% higher than my number. But in the end, it was their number. In the end, they bought my services. I didn't sell it. And in the end, they were happy, and we hit the results that they were looking for.
Nice. So the key to that then is the budget is, if they tell you the budget, clearly, I guess, then you can go into the behavioral psychology behind all this, but that is essentially what they're giving you. That's what they're selling. That's what they're saying they're willing to go to. Yeah. Interesting. I think that's going to be. It's not applicable for everyone, of course, if you're selling a fixed service price product like some of the audience. But I know there's people who sell artwork on the show who listen to the show. There's people who sell one-off, computer systems, things of that nature. So yeah, I love that, asking for, because it's a question that probably we all ask. And then we
Yeah.
go,
Now, Will,
let me just
yeah.
finish this, because I think a lot of people will ask for the budget. Oh, our budget is 10 grand a month. And then your immediate answer is big grin on face. Oh, it only costs 5 grand a month. We're going to be fine. And you've done yourself out of a deal there, haven't you?
Totally, because you didn't understand how that 10,000 a month is spread around.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, when you get an answer, you never accept somebody's first answer. We call this the rule of 3+. You listen to the answer, you question the answer. You listen to the answer, you question the answer. You listen to the answer, you question the answer, and you go deep. And by going deep, you're getting to the truth. Will, why do you go to work? I get money is my answer all over the world. Money to do what? To have a certain lifestyle. Your lifestyle is going to be different than the next person. Mm-hmm. And what they have to understand is when you take them down that journey, work is nothing but a stepping stone to helping you get where you want to go. But the problem in the world today is most people don't know where they want to go. And it's the same with buyers. They don't know what they want. It's your job to help them discover their pains, help them discover their needs, in a sense, the budget, and everything. This way, it's their number, they're buying, you're not selling.
Love it. Bob, I've got one final question before you tell us a little bit about the book. Even though we've covered it, Aaron tells us where we can find it as well. But I've got one final question to ask everyone that comes on the show. And that is, if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give him to help him become better at sales?
I've been in sales since a young age. Actually, my parents had a business, and at 6 years old, I was selling, and I've been in it all my life. When I graduated in business administration, all the jobs were sales jobs. And I didn't want to go there because sales has that stigma about it. You know, it's not that. Now, mind you, today we're on a big mission to change that stigma because we believe that the sales profession is the most important profession of all professions. Without salespeople, there's no transactions. Without transactions, no revenue, no bottom line, no organization. Nobody would have a job. The world revolves around sales. So kudos to salespeople around the world. And we're going to work on that to change that image because we believe it's a very important profession. The other part here now, I lost my train of thought.
If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self.
Yes. And what I found, I got back into sales, love sales. I've been in sales all my life. And one thing I do realize is this. It's not about making a sale. It's about building a relationship. The more relationships you have, the bigger your network. The bigger your network, the bigger your net worth. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense.
Because you see, everything in life is about relationships. The more friends we can make, the more relationships we have, the bigger our network. And, you know, if you go to your network, someone in that network can help you out. That network is your secondary sales force. That secondary sales force is going to promote you and help you get somewhere. So that's why I say your network is also increases. The bigger your network, the bigger your net worth.
And with that, tell us a little bit about the book and where we can find it as well.
Well, actually, Will, there's 3 books I'm going to share with you. The first one that I did is Discipline for Life. You are the author of your future. An interactive book. I believe, just like our interview, I don't tell you answers. I like to engage people in conversation. So I tell them my story and I ask them questions so that they go inside, find the answers for themselves, and define the life they want. So it's called a business plan for your personal life. Another one that I wrote is Motivate Your Team in 30 Days. And then this book that we've been talking about now is Velocity Selling, How to Attract, Engage, and Empower Buyers to Buy. They're available on Amazon, most bookstores, websites. I think velocityselling.com is the best website to go to because, and bobu.com. Bobu.com can give you a lot of free resources like chapters out of the books. Velocityselling.com, one of the nice things we have there is we have a free ebook, which kind of helps people understand this whole interview we just did. There's an ebook called The New Economy of Buyers, Why Traditional and Consultative Selling No Longer Works. And in there, we describe buyers' behaviors and how the things they value and how they like to be treated and how buyers buy. So it really helps you understand what happens before you go into the call. And then, of course, we also offer people a 7-day free trial offer to our virtual training. It's interactive video training with testing, real-life application, workbook exercises, and it includes monitoring, tracking, and management reporting on a daily basis if you want it. And it covers globally. Like we have organizations that have their sales force on this online training all over the world. And then with it, we supplement it with monthly webinars or coaching calls or one-on-one visits if need be. And of course, we do sales conferences as well.
Awesome stuff. We'll link to that in the show notes over at salesman.red for everything that we talked about in the episode itself. And with that, Bob, I really appreciate your energy. I appreciate your unique take on a lot of this. We'll have you back on in the near future for certain, as an open invitation as well to come back on whenever you've got time, because I appreciate your insights and all of this. And I want to thank you for joining us on the Salesman Podcast.
And I want to thank you, Will, for the work you're doing and the extra time you're putting in this to make this sales profession better and to help promote different ideas and different things. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this interview, and I thank you a million times over.
And there we have it. Thank you, Bob, for coming on the show. We're going to have Bob back on to dive into this in more detail because there's a lot more to go out with this. And if you haven't already, it's well worth checking out yesterday's show with Dave Curlin, salesman.red/181, where we dive into the DNA of the salesperson. You find out essentially by the end of that episode whether you have it or not. So with all that said, without further ado, I'll speak with you guys, Sales Nation, again tomorrow.